Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Today we'll be going over all of the fantasy relevant free agency signings thus far. We are Friday, March 14th as of this recording. So every move, trade, signings made up until now, we're going to see how fantasy relevant they are. If a player might shoot up or down our rankings, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for more. We got videos coming out every week. That being said, let's hop straight into it. We're going to go position by position, starting with the QBs. They're typically most important. These first couple guys will be instant starters on their team, and that is Geno Smith heading to the Raiders. This was via trade. Hurts a little bit as a Seahawks fan, considering who they brought in for a replacement, who we'll get to in just a second. But for Geno's sake, for him, I think his value should be roughly the same. He has Myers, Bowers to throw the ball to. He's teaming up with former coach Pete Carroll, but I think his overall value will be about the same. I don't think his situation's drastically better or worse. As for the receivers around him, they should get a nice bump up. Bowers, Myers. I think Jakobi Meyers could really be in line for a good season with Geno here. Obviously not the talent that JSN is probably, but I think he could play a similar role either on the outside or the slot. I really like Jakobi Meyers with this Geno Smith move. And then the replacement I was talking about, Sam Darnold. I am not pleased about this. As a guy who really holds onto the ball, doesn't anticipate throws, that doesn't really fly when your offensive line is poor. And I mean very poor. Not to mention we've gotten rid of most of the weapons outside of JSN. I'm really skeptical on Darnold. It's easy to be skeptical when it's the team you root for, but I really am concerned and think he's going to regress quite a bit this year. And really the contract that the Seahawks signed him to, they can get out of it after a year. So I don't know how confident they truly are in what he brings. They might even draft a rookie. I would not be surprised. In fact, I'm hopeful of that. Moving on to guys that could be battling for starting roles, but obviously are not the penciled-in starter as of today, and that is Daniel Jones to the Colts. And a very interesting move. If you kind of follow this channel, you know I am not a truther of Anthony Richardson by any stretch of the imagination. So I truly think Daniel Jones could come in and win the starting job. And if he doesn't do that, I think he could get quite a bit of playing time throughout the year, whether that's a rich injury or poor play. Definitely a situation to watch. If you're an Anthony Richardson dynasty owner, I would be getting a little scared right now. I think Daniel Jones could really push him for better or for worse. It's determined to see. And then the next guy who will be fighting for a starting job is Justin Fields. Now, the Jets signed him to a pretty decent contract. By no stretch of the imagination is it starter money. So if they bring in a rookie or someone else, they've obviously cut Aaron Rodgers. So as of now, he is the guy. But I'll be interested to see if they bring in a rookie. I imagine they will, to kind of battle Fields. Although a Fields to Garrett Wilson reconnection from Ohio State days would be pretty interesting. I just don't think Justin Fields is that great of a passer, though. So I just think that would bring down Garrett's value a little bit overall. And then next, we'll just get into guys who are going to be locked-in backups, kind of have come in seasons past or started in seasons past, and that is Zach Wilson to the Dolphins. With Tua being injured a lot, we could see him getting some play time, which is never pretty. Jacoby Brissett to the Cardinals, solid pickup. Mac Jones to the Niners, getting the Shanahan reunion that they originally thought they were going to get on draft night. And then Gardner Minshew to the Chiefs. All going to be clear backups to obvious starters, but should be okay if they need to perform and play. Brissett to the Cardinals is really interesting to me. I think kind of elevate Marv a little bit, which is crazy to say because he's got a little bit of a gunslinger attitude mentality to him. And I think Marv would benefit from someone just hucking targets his way, as well as McBride, to be frank. So I think that would be interesting, barring something freaky to Kyler. Before I move on to the running backs, I want to note the key players that are still available at the quarterback position, and that'll be most notably Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. Two guys who very likely will be the starters for the teams they signed to be determined. Aaron Rodgers has lots of teams wanting him to make a decision, and we all know Aaron Rodgers moves on his own time. I don't know if his style of play is still viable in the NFL, so I'm very excited to see where he turns up and see what weapons that affects. And then Russ should be a fine starter wherever he lands. Although, running out of decisions, so you gotta decide soon. Draft is coming up in April, so we'll see. Let's move into the running backs now. It was a much less exciting running back free agency carousel this year. Only a few notable guys, in my opinion. Starters, Aaron Jones just straight back to the Vikings. Should be an excellent play. I thought they might let him go in free agency, but I'm really glad to see that they kind of kept him around. I think he's getting a little bit older, but he should be in line for a nice solid season as he had last year. Hopefully a few more touchdowns rolling his way, and he'll really be a nice weapon. Probably will produce higher than he gets drafted. And then Najee to the Chargers. I surprisingly like this move. I think the Chargers is a great landing spot for him. Obviously, Dobbins, Edwards are gone. So he is the man as of now. I suspect they might draft somebody. They have Kamani Vidal from last season. I don't think he's who they are expecting to be anything special, maybe a third down back. But I really like this Najee to the Chargers move more than I thought I would, to be honest. This might be the perfect landing spot for him. I think he could get 8 to 10 touchdowns and just be a little bit of a workhorse like he has been in Pittsburgh the last few years. Moving on, the Cowboys signed a couple of lower tier guys, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders. Fully expect it to be Javonte as the lead man. He's also a good pass catcher, which Dak likes to dump the ball down quite a bit. I don't know if this puts either guy really on my radar. I think Javonte would be worth grabbing as an RB3, maybe RB4, but nothing overly exciting. And then Kenneth Gainwell to the Steelers. A little surprising to me. He feels similar to a Jaylen Warren type player, although I feel like Gainwell is really explosive and just hasn't had the opportunity in Philly. I personally like the player, but feels like a similar talent to Warren. So we'll kind of see how that role is divvied up. And then as a pure backup, Khalil Herbert to the Colts. And then a little surprising to me, it should be a pure backup, Rico Dowdle to the Panthers. Obviously, Chuba's there. So a little bit surprising. Maybe they're wanting to take off Chuba's workload this year a bit. Chuba and Rico could end up having a split, 60-40, 70-30, which is kind of a bummer for Chuba owners. I feel like this will cap his ceiling at the minimum, and definitely a bummer for Jonathan Brooks, dynasty owners. 2 ACLs already. He's barely had any time in the NFL. Clearly, they're planning for life without him as they signed Chuba to an extension. Signed Rico here just to a 1-year deal, but not looking good for Jonathan Brooks. We'll see how that backfield divvies up. Notable running backs still left on the market. J.K. Dobbins, who I mentioned earlier, should be a fine starter if he lands in a good spot. And then Nick Chubb, I believe he's probably on his way out just with the amount of injuries, especially catastrophic knee injuries he's had. So we'll see where those guys end up. I think Dobbins will be definitely the more impactful player. And now we'll get to the juice of it, the wide receivers. Feels like it was a big wide receiver free agency period. Lots of guys getting paid, lots of bums, in my opinion, getting solid money. So let's first jump straight into the tier of the big dogs, the bona fide studs. And that's starting off with Davante Adams, heading to the Rams, teaming up with Matthew Stafford. Obviously, I think this should elevate Stafford. I think Adams will be more impactful than Cooper Kupp has been the last 2 seasons. You'd think it has to put a cap on Puka's ceiling a little bit. Some of those targets are obviously going to go to Adams, so Puka might have to drop down the rankings a little bit, but I think Puka is definitely the wide receiver 1. But Adams will get his fair share, as he always has. And then another big trade, Deebo Samuel to the Commanders. I touched on this a little bit in my previous video. If you haven't checked that out, do so. And I think this is about as perfect a landing spot as you can for Deebo. Not that shoots him up my rankings a crazy amount, but I think the Commanders are going to get the ball into his hands early and often. Just like the 49ers had been in previous years, I think Commanders will do so in that Cliff Kingsbury offense. A couple guys that we thought might go to different teams ended up staying with their squads. T. Higgins signed a franchise tag to stay with the Bengals. Rumor has it they might be trading. I highly doubt it. T. Higgins going to stay high in the rankings for me. He's an unbelievable talent. And then Chris Godwin back to the Bucks, reportedly leaving $20 million on the table to stay with the Bucks. So obviously he likes staying down there in South Florida. Running the same squad back, I think Chris Godwin should be in for a good season, so long as he's recovered from that injury, because it was a brutal one. And then the last big dog here, DK Metcalf, obviously traded to the Steelers, as my Seahawks are in a full rebuild. Obviously, this depends on quarterback, right? If Aaron Rodgers gets there, we like it a little more for Metcalf and Pickens. If a rookie or another backup is there, I know they've signed Mason Rudolph, which is kind of irrelevant, but we really have to see what the quarterback is, to see if they'll kind of vibe with DK. You know, DK has got lots of anger issues or whatever you want to call them. So we got to see if they're appeasing DK. But obviously he's signed a huge extension with them, so he's there to stay. Not too sad about it as a Seahawks fan. Leaves our wide receiver room thin. Next, we have a tier of mid-level guys who got anywhere from that 10 to 12 to $15 million a year range. Josh Palmer to the Bills. I don't know what the Bills' obsession is with signing mid-tier guys to higher money, but when you're attached to Josh Allen, I assume you get a little bit of a boost. But I'm not going to fall for the Josh Palmer thing 2 years in a row. Tutu Atwell signed a 1 year, $10 million extension. Kind of surprising Tutu got that much money. Obviously, he's the third option at best now with Adams coming to town. He'll only be fantasy relevant if one of those guys goes down, similar to previous seasons. Tutu kind of is opportune when someone goes down, but he doesn't have standalone value until then. Darius Slayton back with the Giants, typically fantasy irrelevant, especially with Malik Neighbors there in town. Christian Kirk traded to the Texans. Texans are kind of loading up on mid-level guys to try to supplement Nico. I think Kirk could play a great role in the slot with CJ Stroud. So this could be a sneaky move. We'll see how he is coming off the injury. I don't think major impact there. And then Dyami Brown to the Jags. His little playoff run of 2-3 games really brought in the bag for him this offseason. And the Jags just love signing horrible players to extensions. Last year, Gabe Davis. This year, Dyami Brown. I expect him to remain non-fantasy relevant as he has been for his career. But the Jags see something they like. And then finally, we have a string of guys signed to lower level, single-digit million contracts. Easy for me to say. I would love that kind of money. But you know what I'm saying. Lower tier guys. We've got Demarcus Robinson to the Niners. He's a good best ball guy. He might have a couple 2-touchdown games. Hard to predict otherwise. DeAndre Hopkins to the Ravens. He seems old and washed. If his Chiefs days were any indication, but you never know. Lamar, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins. It was the trio they wanted forever. Now they got it. Is it too late? Probably so, but we'll see. MVS to the Seahawks. Seahawks need someone to throw the ball to now that they've cut Tyler Lockett, traded DK. Obviously, they're going for the triple initials, JSN, MVS. We'll see who else they get with the triple initial. But MVS could be a good deep ball guy. Not that Darnold's great at throwing the deep ball, but he could probably take a little pressure off of JSN, which I think will help boost his value, just having some sort of threat on the outside. But standalone value for MVS, I don't know. It'll be similar to his whole career where it's going to be very, very hard to predict. Mike Williams back to his home squad at the Chargers. He seems old and washed, so we're going to try not to fall for that again, as we learned in one of my previous videos. Olamide Zaccheaus, I believe, to the Bears. Could be a good possession guy. Similar type player to DJ Moore, obviously just less talented Zaccheaus is. So we'll see if he has any sort of role at all. There are some decent names still on the free agency block for the wide receivers. Stephon Diggs coming off the ACL. We'll see what team wants to take the shot on him. Cooper Kupp, who was recently cut by the Rams. Rumor has it he wants to stay on the West Coast. Seahawks, if we can get him for cheap. Something to think about. Keenan Allen, little old, but still has it, in my opinion. We'll see where he ends up. Amari Cooper, we have to see. Man, it is tough. I feel like he still could have a good year or two in him. He just hasn't shown it. It was definitely not last year. So let's just jump straight into the tight ends. Only a couple to note, mostly going back to their old teams. Zach Ertz back to the Commanders. We'll see if the old man still got it. He produced obviously brilliantly last year in that first season with Jaden Daniels. I expect more of the same as a safe, reliable dump down option. Although Debo's in town now, so that could take off a little bit of his production. Mike Gesicki signed a big bag with the Bengals in a little bit of a surprising move. I think they like the versatility he brings, able to kind of play that third wide receiver role as the tight end behind Jamar and T. I think Gesicki could really rise up my tight end rankings. I think they have a lot of trust and like his athleticism. And then the big guy who signed to a different team, Evan Ingram to the Broncos. As you saw in one of my previous videos, if you haven't, go watch. I'm really high on Bo Nix this year, and I think this move is a great move for them. They didn't have a bona fide stud tight end, and I think Evan Ingram can provide that. Another guy like Gesicki, you can split out wide if you need to. Just very versatile. I think Evan Ingram could be in line for a good season with Bo Nix at the quarterback position. Nobody too major to note. Still left on the tight end. There's going to be some backups, some blocking tight ends, but I think the kind of fantasy relevant tight ends are in their spots. And now we have to see where the rookies go, because there's a couple of stud rookie tight ends. We'll see where they end up. And then last thing I did want to mention, the indirect fantasy relevancy of the offensive line. I wanted to note a couple teams that either lost some O-linemen or signed some O-linemen that'll really help either the run game or protecting the quarterback. Obviously, the Texans traded away Laramie Tunsil and I believe lost 2 other starters. So they're definitely retooling that offensive line. CJ Stroud was a guy who I already felt was under quite a bit of pressure last season. Can't be good for the run game with Joe Mixon. We'll see if they address it in the draft. But a team that lost some O-linemen, as well as the 49ers. They've been losing all kinds of talent, including a few offensive linemen, so that's just something to note. And the last team who lost O-linemen, the Colts lost a couple of their bona fide studs, I believe a guard and a tackle, to the Vikings, actually. The Vikings signed both players. So Vikings is one of my teams that added at the O-line position. Should be great for Aaron Jones, getting a couple of guys. We know how good that Colts O-line has been in the run game for Jonathan Taylor. Bring that over for Aaron Jones. Could be in line for a solid season. And then the team who arguably made the most moves in the offensive line, the Bears, traded for 2 studs and signed another in free agency, kind of locking up the interior of their offensive line. You really love to see it as a Caleb Williams fan who was sacked far and away the most last season. Partially his fault, partially the line, but they're addressing it heavily. So hopefully a little pass protection, a little run blocking for DeAndre Swift. I think that Bears team is headed in the right direction. I think this could be the year under Ben Johnson. All right, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the free agency reactions, fantasy implications. Next week, we have a little bit different of a video kind of involving March Madness. If you're a college basketball fan or just enjoy March Madness in general, stay tuned for that one. And it'll be dropping on Wednesday before the game starts. So not our usual Saturday uploads. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Once we get to 100 subscribers, me and Choppy, who you'll see in a minute, we're getting thick cut bacon as a celebration. Hi everyone, Choppy here. Make sure you subscribe for thick cut bacon. Thank you guys for watching. Bye now. Other than that, make sure you like, comment down below a signing that you're really excited about. Maybe it's for your team personally or just fantasy-wise you're excited about. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.